Hello and welcome to GetFPV Live. My name is Andy Graber, and today we're going to be talking about the new QAV-PRO Lifter from Lumenier, the new professional cinema drone that was just released last week. We are going to be joined today by the creators of this drone, as well as Cinequads, the professional pilots over in Germany that have been flying this drone now and helped us develop it as well. We're going to be taking questions and answers from the community as we go through the overview of what it took to build this, what it took to put it together, the thought and the design process behind it. And I think we'll give you guys a few peeks at what makes this drone different than what else is on the market today, and why this maybe has a few secrets it's not obvious at first. So I'm going to bring the team in here, and we'll get started right away. Feel free to join us on chat, and we'll answer your questions as best we can as we go here.
What's up, guys?
Hey, everybody. So we're joined here by Cinequads. We got Phil and Angelo. We have Santiago from the design team and Quad McFly as well, one of our engineers helping design this frame. So guys, let's get started today. I wanted to give everybody a chance to see this drone kind of in a live, in-person format. We have a few of them here. I know a few of the teams already been flying them. This is what it looks like, full ready to fly, the QAV-PRO Lifter. It's in the store right now in GetFPV. And why don't we get started, Phil, from your perspective, what was the reasoning for this project even getting started? What did you guys need as professionals already in the industry flying FPV cinema drones? What was missing and what did you want to create?
Yeah, so as you know, we both are like professionals. So we run a production company that does FPV commercials and all this kind of stuff. So we been in the need to fly these bigger cameras like the Red Komodo, and there was a few options out there on the market which are also nice, but like for super high-end commercial work, there's a lot of pressure, and you need to like have the stuff ready quickly, and it needs to be just super professional what the drone and the equipment is like. So we needed to change a few things up, and then we had this great idea, and we've been talking to you guys and the team, to design something super extraordinary. And that's how we came up with this super amazing production beast.
Awesome. So like, what was one of the key features that you were looking for in a cinema drone for an FPV drone?
I mean, it needs to be super fast and agile, but to be on the smallest footprint possible. So we're running here 9-inch propellers on this version, and we love the feature, that the battery is top mounted on the frame. So it's easier for, quick stops, and you can switch faster your battery on set. Instead of if it being underneath, you always land on your battery. It's also not good for your gear. And also like the dampening plate and the camera mounting options, you need to change your angle quickly. You need to flip it for reverse shooting, all these stuff. What you need to do on set needs to be super fast.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe quickly we go through kind of some of the specs of the drone for those who don't know it or it's on the site already. I mean, this thing is capable of like about 90 miles an hour on the stock setup that we're offering on the GetFPV website for the ready to fly. It can carry a full cinema camera like you show there, Red Komodo. We've done flights even with a 3-axis gimbal plus a Red Komodo on it. So it's capable of doing a lot of weight if needed. And it's very, I would say, versatile in the way it can be set up. I'd love to dive into some of those features here in a little bit, kind of showing all the different configurations you can do with this as a solid platform. Before we get into that, maybe we can get into some of the design elements of what the process was like. Ryan, you joined us early on kind of in this process when we were brainstorming what to do. How did we get to where we are today in terms of design, the look, the feel? It has this upward swept arm that isn't, as common in this design. It also kind of tees off from a single arm to 2 arms. So what was the thought process and how we came to that?
Yeah, so The idea was to keep the center of gravity as low as possible so that we wouldn't need really long landing gear. Most of the landing gear solutions that we've seen add, a kind of a fragile element that tends to be less robust. So by keeping the body of the drone as the lowest element and keeping the landing gear as short as possible in that overall, structure means that it's much more robust in terms of the build and the rigidity of the frame. Similar thing using, hang on, I have it here. Let me just grab it real quick. Using aluminum structure and using the T braces here and the braces right off of the main plates allows us to still have that upswept, keep the body low, but keep it as rigid as possible. Any of the flat carbon solutions are going to suffer in terms of rigidity for when you're doing, anything arched or anything angled. The flat carbon is not going to be able to be as rigid in the same structure as a tubed carbon will be. So it was a lot of thoughts about, motor placement, keeping the body low, keeping it flexible in terms of the ability to rapidly, change between different size builds without needing to re-engineer a whole lot of stuff. Those are all considerations that go into the decision on the T structure and using the tubes instead of flat carbon for that.
Yeah, I think you bring up some interesting points. I think the two that stick out to me is the tubular arm design giving extra strength, especially torsionally, right? Because you talk
Right.
about a flat carbon fiber sheet that can be very strong in certain directions, but when you talk about twisting motions or when you start going outside of what it structurally was designed to do, it starts failing and you have to either reinforce it with other carbon fiber, to stop it from twisting in that direction. I think this octagonal tube is extremely strong. It's a rather large tube, but still lightweight, but structurally, when you feel this thing, there's no give, there's no twist to it. It's just solid, like rock solid. The other part, the aluminum you talked about, I mean, this is a 3-dimensional design. It's not a flat 2D design. So taking a tube at an angle, having to convert that to an arm, by using the aluminum to hold those shapes in place in I think a very clever way. We have built-in, it's kind of hard to see here, but there's built-in threads here for the steel screws that go through it. So it goes right into the aluminum. You don't have like loose nuts hanging around anywhere. So it's very clean. It's not obvious from this design, but we went through a lot of iterations to get to this final design. I think we got pretty close on our first go at it, but then we refined it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times at least until we got to where we're at today through testing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really happy with the end result of how that works. And it seems to work really well. One of the biggest tricks was getting these, so we have these steel bolts going through the arm, but we have it going vertically and horizontally, which really clamps down onto the tube. So there's no play. The earlier prototypes we had, it worked well, but you had just a little bit of a shimmy or a play in it, which was kind of frustrating to get rid of. It actually flew fine, but we wanted to get rid of all slop. So the way it's designed now, it clamps down. It really is tight and works well together. I think the other thing that's interesting is how some of the accessories, like the antenna mounted on the outside edge here. We got the LEDs that are integrated into the ends of the arm. Phil, can you talk about a little bit your experience with how the antenna placement and maybe the LEDs as a feature, how that's been helpful in terms of flying on sets and performance for you guys?
Yeah, of course. So like, as you know, flying with those big rigs, you have this big bulky camera always there. So, and on all our other options, we had always, the antenna somewhere coming up here. So always one side was blocked. So that's why we had a lot of range issues actually, because this big bulky camera was always in front of the antennas. So that's why it's so good on this design. Actually, we have insane range, like on the 5-inch, because we are sticking so far out, like Andy just showed, it's so far away from the camera body itself, so once the drone is turning, we have always clear signal. There was no issues or whatever. The same goes for our radio link. So crossfire antenna here is super far back also from the camera, and also the other one here on the front on the nose, which helps us super, to be reliable on set, which was also super important for us. Then, I mean, the feature with the LEDs, sometimes we have night shoots. So there's certain regulations where you need to have flashing lights on the drone. So it's super easy if that's totally integrated. And just if you don't need it, it like looks badass. So once it's coming and approaching, with those swept up arms and you have those LEDs, it just looks badass if it flies towards you. So that's also another cool feature to just be the playboy on set.
One thing to note with the LEDs is that sometimes if you're shooting in like in a cloudy environment or there's mist, like the LED PCB that we have connects to Betaflight for Betaflight control. So you can assign them to a switch. So if you're in an environment where you're concerned about the light from the LEDs reflecting off of what you're shooting, you can have them on during landing and takeoff, and then you can have them on a switch on your radio so that you can turn them off during shoot to prevent any light leakage, and then turn them back on when you're done shooting. So that's from a production standpoint, that's a really critical component that we took into account.
And it's also super awesome how like the design team integrated them into the arms, because like if they're not on, you don't see that this is an LED or something, attached. There's no wires, nothing. It's like super clean, like inspired from the Inspire, actually, from DJI. So it's like super snug in there, no wires, it's blacked out. So even if you don't run them, there's no like, okay, you put something on there. So it's a really high-end solution.
One other thing to point out, Andy had talked about the aluminum mounts being integrated, and that kind of what spawned this. But we could not have done the camber on the arms that we did with any other way. Like we were going to have to use the machined aluminum. There's no flat way of mounting that to get the tilt on the arms that we got. So there's a 3-degree camber on the arm ends that pulls the motors this way just a tiny bit. And we'll be sharing some additional data here before too long, but that makes a significant difference on yaw performance and roll too, to a certain extent. But you notice it the most on yaw.
Mm-hmm. Which I think, when you're doing really precise flying that's required for a cinema movie, you want all that resolution that you can get in terms of control on yaw, no bad characteristics. Some rigs I've flown even on SAR stuff where you start mixing yaw into the movement and you maybe get a little bit of a dip because something's not quite balanced right. I think this one, we really hit it out of the park in terms of the performance on handling, especially on the yaw axis, which is very important when you're tracking something and maybe have to do a little bit of a turn while you're coming around side it or something like that. That's a really cool feature. And I think able to get that -3 degrees of camber into the design was really important, something that we talked about early on. And I'm glad that was able to do it. We touched a little bit about, how clean the build is once it's all put together. You don't see wires really hanging out anywhere, right? So if you were to break this apart on the inside, there's actually a ton of stuff going on inside. So you have 8 motors in total, 4 motors on one side. All these motors have 3 wires each. You have LEDs on both ends, which have, I think 4 wires each because they're actually addressable LEDs individually. You have the antenna that has a extension coax going inside. So all of this runs through the arm. We have some guides in there as well that help if you were to build this yourself to guide all the wiring in there to keep it from pinching when you get the bolt going. So it's very well thought out how everything flows through the system.
Yeah,
and
Santi's got really the guide there.
That's a guide that kind of it helps the bolt goes through, but then you're not going to pinch any wires that have to flow through that area.
And it means that you can, when you loosen the arms and everything, you can put the bolts in and out while the wires are already in the arm without worrying about, getting the bolt right through and catching it. So.
Right. Why don't we, I'm going to do my overhead cam here. We can show a little bit about the internal layout and kind of how that works. This is an early prototype I'll share. So it's got some earlier parts on there, but it'll give you an idea of how it goes. Let's go to this screen here. So Santi, why don't you talk a little bit about maybe some of the layout and the thought of how this was laid up internally here? Let me try to get a little closer on this camera.
Sure. So let's start, I think, with the internal layout. It was a big challenge when we were trying to do the arms, because as you have wires going through the arm, and it's just through it, and when you get to the riser arm, you're getting like 4 motors plus the pigtail, right, through the riser arm. This type of inserts, it's kind of like a cross insert, makes the wiring a little bit easier on the arm when you want to wires through each segment, and also we create. In this insert, so the ball can run pinching any wires, which was like a really happened to us multiple times when creating the prototypes. We cable times. So in this case, we did these inserts, internal layout of the body of the frame. Basically, like 3 stacks. We have a back stack. Like the first, we did this PCB, which allows us to have a cleaner and wiring, where we can have multiple outputs to different things. The first thing that we want to power on is the first ESC. Then we have another way to power the mid ESC, and then pads dedicated to power the LED system. So every PDB, which is like the main important part of the power system, and then we're basically just feeding everything from there. Our unit on the front, we have like a dedicated pocket, like CNC pocket, so we can put the air unit pretty neat. And then we have the arms coming through the sides where we are to the multiple ESCs. That's like the thought up.
Yeah, awesome. Just to recap, kind of what he showed is we have the power distribution. This is an earlier prototype, but the final one's similar to this. So you take main power input here, splits it off into the 2 ESCs and auxiliary power pads in a clean way. You have ESC 1 and 2 here on the bottom. LED power distribution board goes here. This is an early prototype as well, but the final one actually that you get with the kit are plug and play. So you literally, all you have to do is plug in 4 wires coming from the arms, and then 1 signal wire comes from the board here to your flight controller, and then you can control all the LEDs through Betaflight, and they're individually programmable. So you can actually address each LED separately if you desired. You could have a different color in the front than in the back. They're full RGB. So that's really cool how that works. Flight controller, we stack up here in the front then, and then in front of that is the air unit. Specifically, this one's the DJI full-size air unit. You could certainly put other ones in there, even analog if that's something that you wanted to do. But we have a dedicated spot for that in the front with the camera. And as you can see from the layout, everything is nice and cleanly laid out. Nothing's like really crammed in there. It's, I would say, a nice balance between getting things compact but not overly compact where it's a real pain to build, which some cases can be on other lifters that I've seen. We have spots for accessories, like this is a receiver here. You could have regulators and other things where you have spots to tie those down. Even if you wanted to do an individual arm ESC, you could get creative and do that instead of the 4-in-1s.
So this prototype here is actually built with the APD 80 amp individual ESCs in there. So they do all, there's plenty of room. There's 2, if you look in the back here, there's 2 of the PDBs, the APC PDBs in there. Yeah, this was just testing. So ignore the XT60. That will be an XT90. But it does fly with the XT60. fine actually, but I'm not going to trust it long term.
But don't throttle up.
Actually, even at full throttle, it handled it okay, but I wouldn't definitely do that long term.
Nice.
So you guys
I
can
think
see
what
here all
I
these
think
motor wires. Sorry, Santi, all these motor wires come down the arm. They exit here. There's a hole underneath this aluminum that you can't quite see in this top shot, but everything flows through there and out towards the center then. So each side, you would have those motor wires, cable for the video system, and then LED wires. So it all flows cleanly through the arm into the center body. Go ahead, Santi, what were you saying?
I think that the different thing that we worked on, and then it's this PDB. With most single lifters, we get this issue where like wiring and the like power solution, it's very complicated when you try like 2 10-gauge wires to one ESC pad and then like kind of read through the second ESC. It's really not convenient. So we decided to make this like wiring way easier. There are also we're using to power the LED system that can be reused if you have like to power, I don't know, maybe your camera out of that pad, or if you want to have like running through that like through a Pololu as well, or a BEC. Really important in order to make everything cleaner and more organic lifter.
And also, it's worth pointing out that PDB has both 30.5 by 30.5 and 20 by 20 mount holes. So it is a standard component that you can use in any build. So I believe the plan, Andy, is to offer that as a standalone purchase, right?
Yeah, we'll have it as a spare part, certainly if you need to replace it for this kit, or if you wanted to use it in other drones or other cases, it'll be available on the site I think in the next week or so. It's a very thick copper piece, so it can handle the high current. That was purposely designed that way. We didn't want that to be a limiting factor, so I believe it's 4 ounces of copper or something. It's way thicker than a normal, like what you'd see on a PCB on a flight controller or even an ESC. So it's a pretty heavy duty piece of copper that essentially just splits your main power into other pads that are more easily usable and can solder. I wanted to get to a few of these questions that have been coming in through the live chat. Thank you for everyone who's joined us too, as we've been discussing the QAV-PRO Lifter here. Let's see. Taiwan, pre-filtered log. I think it's actually coming up here soon. Phil and his team just today did some flights where they were going to be sharing the logs from their black box log data, as well as the raw footage. Some people have been asking for that just to see what do you get straight out of the frame without any editing. What does it look like as a baseline tune? We'll be sharing that. Phil will be sharing that through his channel actually later today. I think he was uploading just before this video. So we're looking forward to showing that to you guys. Phil, you and your team actually, in terms of the tuning though, you did a lot of work with Sam, I believe, to get this really tuned in to a really nice tune, and maybe talk through a little bit about what you guys found out in terms of tuning this frame. Are there any challenges or any surprises, or how did that process go?
Yeah, so it was Brian, not Sam, but it was actually Brian. It was actually Brian White. So we, as a professional team, we need to get the maximum out of this drone. So it needs to fly absolutely perfect. And this was also the request, we had towards Ryan and his team. We needed to be super stiff. He explained already with the angled arms. We need just get the maximum out of this frame. So once we had this in place, we actually talked to Brian White. He runs the PID toolbox, and we had actually a 10-hour session to just tune this thing, I would say, to 99%. I mean, there's always people who think, okay, we could do this different, but I'm going to upload, or it's already uploaded. We're going to maybe watch it at the end of the stream. We did some test flights already with some raw logs. I was just earlier looking with this with Ryan together. So we tuned this to the maximum, and it flies absolutely stunning. And also you can see the raw footage from the red camera. is like, it looks like stabilized. So we are pretty stoked about that.
The next good thing is, I need to say it quickly, if you changing the lens and you have a good tune, sometimes if you fly bigger lenses or smaller lenses, it's possible to fly different pitch profiles. But on this frame, it's really cool because you can put the mount a little bit in the front or a little bit in the back. Also the battery, so you have anytime the same balanced CG. And if you have the same CG, the pits are mostly the same. Yeah. So you can fly the same tune with different lenses and weights. It's so beautiful. We love that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's some of the versatility we're talking about. How the setup for the camera, the battery, that whole entire kind of top isolated plate is very configurable in different positions, which allows you to do what you were just describing. Because it's common that in a cinema camera, you're not going to fly the exact same camera lens, every shoot. It's often that you'll change it, even in the same shoot. Maybe you'll change it a few different times.
Yeah, and it's really important. Sometimes on a set, the director said, or the DOP say, hey, we just wanted this same shot, but with other lens. And now you have 5 minutes for the shot. So it's really important to balance the quad quickly without any big adjustments. So you change the lens, you put the battery on it, then you a little bit changing the position of the camera and the battery, and then it's well balanced, and you can fly. So the most time for changing lens, you just need 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah. So you're really fast.
So talking about what we have this, which is the isolation plate, right? This is the plate that adds the camera mount, and it has this mounting patterns, falls around this area, and what it makes, it's we have camera bracket, right? It sits onto this plate, and the patterns, you can shift the weight forward or backwards. Camera, the lens that you get on the camera, that way you can just distribute around this isolation plate. So for example, if you have already set up one camera and you want to have another setup with another camera and another lens, you can just get like this is right, just like a set of this spare part, and then maybe just have a isolation plate with camera plate and with brackets, depending on your flying, I don't know, like a Komodo, and then they want a different type of camera, you can just really fast.
The other thing I'd point out too, we have these quick change thumb nuts, so the entire plate is held on by these nuts on top. You can change them out just by hand, twist them with your thumb. So if you needed to remove this plate to access the part that Santiago was just talking about, very quick, very easy. Under 1 minute, you're taking the plate off. And then you can access those screws if you were needing to move that for some reason. Additionally, you can see the way that this camera mount system works. It's on a hinge point with preset angles. And take one screw out, change the hinge point, you can change the angle of the camera very quickly. So it allows you to change the camera from, what's the degrees of range? I know it goes like negative to...
Negative 15 to 40, I think, or negative 20 to 40 is what it is. So 40 degrees to negative 20 degrees.
So you can actually get a down shot if needed, all the way up to an up tilt that will compensate if you're, flying forward at high speeds. Why you would want a down shot, there's a couple of reasons. Forward flight, certainly there's some cases where you'd want a down shot, but I think even the more interesting case is flipping it around. So it might not be obvious at first, but this entire top plate, the isolation plate we just talked about, can be taken off and flipped 180 degrees. So you can actually keep your rig the same way it is, flip it around 180 degrees, and now you have a camera pointing backwards, which in those cases, you definitely want a camera pointing down, because if you're flying forwards, your drone's tilted forward, you want the camera pointing down a little bit to kind of get a more flat shot. So there's cases where maybe you're in front of the object that you're wanting to film with the camera pointing backwards. Angelo or Phil, have you guys ever done any reverse shots or anything like that's been useful?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. That's why we came up, or that was why we had this request, to have like this super changing camera options. because you are on set, the director say, okay, that's a nice shot, let's do it reversed, like then 50 people stand around you waiting for you to like get tools and stuff, so that's not possible. That's why these 6 thumb screws, you just undo them, you flip it around, 30 seconds, you're ready to go, nothing to change with the battery, you just immediately up in the air. And that's what they love on professional sets, to be always ready.
Yeah, like they say, time is money, right? And I'm sure
one thing you guys,
a lot of pressure.
One thing you guys have done is actually glued the washers to the alpha gel, right? To make it
even exactly faster. So that we are even faster. So that's another 10 seconds we can speed up on set. If that's glued to it, you just take it slightly off, flip it around, some screws. So it's good where we are 2, so everyone can do 3 of them. So that cuts it down another 10 seconds, and we are in the air in no time.
Very cool. Well, I want to show a little bit about too the box. If you were to get the kit version of what you expect to just get in the box visually, real quick, I'm going to go over that. A lot of thought went into the packaging, the presentation, and then just making sure everything was really well organized for you. If you were to get this, it comes with a lot of things that are nice, I think, from a build perspective. Let me put this screen up and share it. So it comes in 2 forms on our site right now at GetFPV. You can buy the kit, which is all the parts needed for the game itself, but it's assembled, or you buy the ready-to-fly version that comes like we showed you here earlier, where it's fully assembled, tuned, test flown, and ready to go. All you'd have to do is bind your radio to it and your goggles, and you'd be ready to go. So the kit version comes like this. It's in a nicely cased box. It has this is the arm assembly already kind of halfway there for you. You see the arms. All of the hardware then is already organized for you in these separate boxes. And then you have a whole nother layer of equipment underneath this, which you get to like the main plates and other components that come with the drone. Like the main plate. And I love the separations of the layers. We have like these really cool pieces of paper that talk about the drone. I just like how that looks visually. Then another protection layer of foam on top of that. So everything's protected really well, packed really well. And then underneath here would be the actual carbon fiber pieces of the drone itself. Like we showed you the top plate and the bottom plate there, and then the camera plates too. So a really cool job on the packaging, showing all the parts here, how they come together. So that's what you would get if you bought the kit.
Great job, Sandy. Great job.
Team.
Yeah, that definitely took time to get everything working. Our team over in China too helped us a lot getting that figured out. That was awesome to see that.
So one thing I want to point out, since we're looking at this here at these 2 plates, Andy, you might want to pull up the bottom plate and the top plate there, the loose ones. So if you notice, the bottom plate and the top plate both have the same press nut mounting patterns on them, but the bottom plate ones are flush so that you can put the landing gear through. So you have like multiple options where you can put the landing gear. So they all like there's the outer holes are kind of where we plan the landing gear, but the wider holes are actually the same mount pattern as the Naked Blackmagic kit, and those are on both the bottom and the top plate. So if you wanted to use the Naked Blackmagic kit, it is an option with this frame as well.
Yeah,
we haven't really talked too much of the landing gear here, but you can see the landing gear. It's very like low profile, like Ryan's saying, built into the bottom plate, screws on very simply. If you wanted to take one off, you can take it off literally by hand and take one off, unscrew it and screw it back on. But it gives you just enough clearance for landing safely to get the props out of the way in terms of the ground. But it's also expandable if you ever were to want to be more creative with other landing gear. But it keeps everything very low profile, so when you're flying in the air, you don't have 12 inches of landing gear hanging down that's going to get snagged on something potentially.
Because I saw landing gear is ugly.
Yeah, and it's a
Well, and it's a weak point, right? Like the taller the landing gear is, the more leverage it has, and the more chances there are of something breaking. So I've never been very happy with any of the designs that have very extensive landing gear, just because it's a fail point.
right. Someone was joking, can I fly this
Right.
through a car? I mean, you definitely could, I guess, if your piloting skill is up there. Why
Do
not?
it. And
So-
I was just sorry that someone was referring again to my voice and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So get to the chopper.
Yeah, I'll
But
get to the
the joke is
chopper.
over now because it's like 10 years old.
Maybe
Guys,
even older than that. Yeah.
we're talking. I went ahead and flipped the whole thing so people can actually have like a better understanding what we were just talking. So in this, you have your FPV camera on front, right? In the front here. So what you will be doing, whole isolation plate that comes with the battery and the camera
Andy,
plate.
can you make him on full screen?
Yeah.
No, Andy. Yeah.
So when you flip the whole thing over, the pattern of the pattern of the top plate. So you're not getting like the camera is not getting obstructed by any of the isolation plate or battery. Went through with Ryan and Cinequad's team because we want an option. Also, if you get creative enough, we have like in the back and plate, which is better to explain that. We have these cutouts, which are meant to go for the camera plate. So we have these cutouts, but we also replicated them on the back. So if you get creative enough, you can have a secondary unit, like a video transmitter system, and another FPV camera if you want one, or just like monitoring the camera while you're flying forward. So that's
or if you're flying analog.
Disclose yet?
Also, if you're flying analog, you can build a cheetah quad, so you can fly forwards and backwards without any problems.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
And also those mount points can be used. You could buy the camera plates and be used to create other 3D printed accessories for like what do they call it, the follow stick or whatever. So you could create a 3D print that goes in the camera mount out the back for mounting a 360 camera.
Yeah, if you want to get like a third-person view of your drone flying.
Exactly.
Yeah, those shots are always really cool. Why don't we talk a little bit about some future use cases? We talked about how it's versatile, but I think maybe pointing out a few things that it can do if you want to modify it, and maybe some things I think we have coming down the pipeline for accessories and different variations of this frame. The way that it's built today, giving its clearance for the props, it's essentially just the length of the tube to a certain degree. What that enables us to do is make this into larger versions by simply lengthening the tube itself. So the stock setup here supports up to 9-inch propellers, and that's what you see here today. But by putting in a longer tube, you go up to probably 13 pretty easily with the same body and everything like that. It just depends on the electronics that you'd want supported and what size motors. But that is something we'll be making available in the near future, is some accessory tube kits. If you wanted to get something to support a larger propeller, it's simply just replacing this tube and the two arm tubes, maybe a little bit longer, and you'd be good to go. So that's one cool feature, I think, that allows this frame, the base frame, to be very modular. So you could start with this and then maybe modify it if you needed to grow it to meet your needs for either more weight, more size, whatever it would be that you're trying to achieve. The other thing I thought was really cool as a possibility that might not be obvious at first is, could you fly this thing in this configuration, Ryan or Phil? What do you think?
Yeah, don't tease too much, but we have in the next few weeks another exciting feature coming that will blow your mind. So I'm just saying, it's a really, really good universal frame.
Yeah, so there's definitely options out there that you can do. I mean, by flipping it upside down, it opens up some other some other possibilities of in terms of clearance, camera placement, real creativity. So I think that's going to be really cool. When you have, I don't have one in front of me right now, but Phil, when you put a gimbal on this, like the RS2 or the RS3, what's it like flying with that? And maybe for someone who hasn't done it before, why would you want a gimbal on a platform like this?
Why we want that?
Yeah, why, as a pilot, why would you want it? Like, what would be the use?
Okay, yeah. So in some certain cases, the directors want to have the FPV look, so like going super fast and slow to the ground, but they also love the stabilized shots, of course, where it's not like shaky and flippy around. So that's why it's really common now on set to fly the DJI gimbal on top of it and using it as a dual operator. So usually Angelo flies it, I'm doing the camera, and we get even more creative, with different looks. As you saw in maybe our introduction video, there was this one shot we did with Audi and the car, where we just follow the car and it looks like a normal drone shot, but then Angelo flies into the forest, but on the side we just see the trees passing by, and then we catch up again to the car. So that would be impossible with any other drone. So that's why it's cool to like have also the gimbal setup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that shot was really cool. I mean, where the drone's flying one way, the camera's pointing another way, and you can really track the subject then in an effective way. So I thought that was a cool way to do it. Hey, Bot Grinder just joined the chat. I see you there. Thanks for joining us, man. When are you going to get into cinequads? Cool. Well, that's the gimbal we talked about a little bit. We talked about the versatility of the top plate, the camera plate, and how we can do different angles, setups. The future options where we can put in longer arms, grow the system a little bit in terms of different options and setups. The stock setup we have is a 6S setup. Mostly that's built around the electronics that are available today. I will say that we have some things in the works for higher voltage, if that's something that you're interested in, that it'll support, an 8S build, maybe even a 12S build, if that's something you want to get into for larger motors or a higher voltage setup. Phil, when you're powering everything else, like the camera, maybe the video system coming from the camera, how do you do that usually on your setups? You're using a separate regulator that powers it or a separate battery?
Yeah, exactly. We have one like XT30, for example, on there, where we can connect whatever we need. And then we have separate cables because we, use the red camera, or we have the Sony FX6 or our gimbal. So we just have little attachments, with different wires and regulators because, they all need different voltage, and we just plug it in and have it ready to go.
Very cool.
And also, like, since you talked about the features, Andy, like, we are like super picky about, how it's on set, how you feel with it, how you can handle it. And like really one important feature is like, we just figure that out once we, build it and put the first prototypes together. It's always, I mean, if there's some pro pilots out there, it's always really crazy to carry those rigs, like on set, to carry it around, or when you hold it to set up the camera, or Angelo needs to change the battery. It's always a hassle because, it's a relatively, heavy piece of equipment. It's like 4 kilograms with the camera and everything and the battery on top. So it's kind of hard to hold, on the standard configurations. And especially also these big props, they're super sharp, but on this one, since we have these nice arms, they act like a handle. So, it's easy to carry around, even if you want to just hold it like this. Maybe that sounds weird to you, but once you really work with these things every day, you feel like, oh my God, that's so easy to carry around, where on the other ones, you maybe cut your hands, or it's difficult, or you need a second person to flip it around to change battery. Yeah. All this stuff is like super annoying if you do it like every day for work. If you just go out to the field and fly a little bit, it's maybe fine, but yeah, we always have this production mindset. So that's why
And sometimes you come on a set in a mountain in the street, and you need to climb a little bit on the mountain to have a better signal. So then you have a transmitter, video goggles, maybe some spare batteries in the hand, and it's really cool if you take in the other hand just this big setup. So it's a big benefit for us.
I also feel this type of, I mean, this thing that we've created is like really professional. Like when you're getting to a set, when this type, it looks way different than just like a custom built drone. You know, like
Yeah, it's not
the way
looking like a
they're-
DIY drone, so
Mhm.
it's looking like a professional drone.
Yeah, so that's a good point you bring up there, Santi, because back in the days we had sometimes the issue on set, and big directors and stuff, actually if you fly these things, you know it's a certain price and they pay a lot of money, to fly a $25,000 drone. And then you come with this custom build, there's wires everywhere, and
Zip ties,
and they look at it and they say, okay, there's a $1 million car you need to fly around now. Are you sure your wires are tight and stuff? So like it's just a little bit, that it will also work. Of course, I mean it's also soldered up in there, but it's just the appearance you have on set. When they pay a lot of money for you to come there. How you approach there and how you look with your gear, so they feel much more comfortable. Okay, that looks like Inspire, like I know from DJI, or I don't know, an Alta 8, like high end.
Yeah,
there's a couple other features I wanted to call out that we hadn't really covered yet. One of them is we have the QAV-PRO universal mount here, so you can use one of our standard universal mounts and mount, like you can actually fit a data logger or other camera in this spot underneath the main camera if you're wanting to get some other additional footage, or to data log for gyroflow or something like that. You have the mount down here that's underneath, that's not disrupting the rest of your stuff when you're working on the other Pro camera. The other thing that may not be immediately obvious, but this was very intentional in the design process, these lower props are pretty much directly in line with this bottom body here in a way that allows a significant portion of the sideways airflow to be forced into the frame. So one of the big problems that some of the other options on the market have is that components inside overheat because it's all enclosed. There's not good airflow. But we intentionally left all of this open in a way that funnels a lot of the air coming off the props into the electronics area to keep all of those ESCs and the video equipment in temperature ranges that are better for their long-term performance. So, keeping this body in line with the props in a way that allows for maximum airflow was a very intentional part of the design. Part of the reason why we wanted to address the upswept arms as well.
Yeah, good point, Ryan. Thanks for pointing those out.
Yeah.
I think you guys can tell a lot of thought went into this frame. Just about, or every piece that you see there's a reason why it exists and a purpose for it being designed the way it was. This was not a quick project. We took our time, wanted to get it right. Talking
it was like 1 year. It was actually insane working on this.
Yeah.
And we also especially Andy was like, okay, guys, let's get this finished. We need to get it out of the door, because he's from the commercial side. But, we as a creative team and the designers and we as pilots, we spend so much time on okay, no, that doesn't work. We need to change this up. And Ryan was, I need to change the design again, but we really want to bring out those products if they're 100% thought through. They need to be high-end quality. Santi was, talking to all these suppliers to get the best material on the market possible. We had so many prototypes actually, to just make this right before we, bring it to the market.
And with the CNC'd aluminum, it's not something I think a lot of people think about from the design and manufacturing perspective, but it takes time to get those parts made. And so when you've made a part and you're like, oh man, now we've got to change it, that means you've got to go back completely through the prototyping, the machining process, and get it. And we went through as Andy was saying earlier, we went through 4 revisions on these arms. And so every time we had to make a change, it was more weeks of waiting for production on the parts, waiting for the samples to be made, waiting to get them so that we could put them together and test fly them. So this really was a labor of love, for our creative team, and just making sure that every single aspect of this was done correctly. So it's it's really been a process, but I think we all really enjoyed it and we're all really happy with the results.
really.
Like
Yeah,
for
also-
example, yeah, go ahead.
No,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I was saying, for example, as Ryan is talking, and also Phil is talking, like about the when for people that is like they are interested in these type of things, when you're working with for them to commit to things that are really detailed. For example, when we're talking about the tolerance for the fitment of the arm, to it's like less than a millimeter of tolerance to make it look like really fit and stiff. So that kind of things are into the whole process and to the whole like lead times in terms of prototype testing. So it's like an R&D process that took really long, but we nailed it.
Yeah,
we're actually like super excited to know once people receive it, because I mean it's nice that we show it and you saw the videos and the introduction, and Andy has it on his table, but it's actually like totally different if you get this box at home or you buy the ready to fly one. If you like have it in your hand and like see it in person, it's really beautiful. So it's like super nice. You're excited. Okay, I'm gonna fly this now. Because and then also like I mean I'm a super visualized guy, so I really love it, if it looks that good, and okay, you fly that thing around and you circle someone, how it appears in the air. It's just like, with the upswept arms, it just looks really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Troy's unboxing video he did a couple days ago, because his comment was like, it's actually better than I thought it was going to be. I was like, yes.
Phil, how would you describe it in terms of handling performance? Like if someone's used to 5-7-inch type drones and how those fly, certainly this is a bigger, heavier type rig, but are you still able to maneuver it like you do a mini quad to some degree? Or how would you describe its maneuverability?
But yeah, I mean, this was our approach. Okay, it needs to like, flippity flop and around like a 5-inch with the GoPro, but with a red Komodo and a big heavy lens. So with 1.6 kilograms of payload or whatever it is. So that was our design goal. That's why we choose the prop and motor combo to actually feel like this, as close as it gets, with like flying 4 kilograms in the air. But actually, that's funny that you talk about, because you guys didn't saw that yet. We went out because there were so many requests to just have a full run. I mean, we did plenty of them, just the raw flight. So there's no stabilization. We even took the alpha gel out to not cheat on any like clean footage and whatever, just to get the data logs right. So I just uploaded on the Cinequad's channel a quick flight of 3 minutes. I don't know, Andy, if you want to look at it. You didn't saw it yet. And then you tell me if that looks like a 5-inch or not.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think guys go to the Cinequad's channel on YouTube, and it sounds like it'll be there in just a few minutes if it's not already up.
It's already up. Yep. I was already watching it.
Go check it out. I haven't even seen it. I'll have to see it once we get done with the stream then, but I'm sure we'll share that around to the community and people. You can leave your comments and thoughts on that, but it gives you an idea, like, we're not trying to cover anything up here in terms of how it's shooting. It's a really good platform, a solid platform that you can build off of. That is a really good tool for a professional cinematographer, FPV pilot that wants to fly high quality, high end equipment like cameras, and you get paid a good amount of money to do that because you have your skills as a pilot. You have the right tools to capture the content, and there aren't that many people in the world today that can do all that together. And Cinequads does that really well, and there's other groups around the world that are pursuing that as well. And we hope that this frame, the QAV-PRO Lifter, can be the go-to, main one for all of these groups going forward. I think we're going to wrap it up here, guys. I really appreciate everyone that joined us here live through the chat and joining us, asking some questions. Leave more questions in the comments if you want to later. We'll try to do our best to answer them as well.
Oh, and one other thing, that video, we should have a link to the raw log from that flight in the video description momentarily. I think it just needs to get uploaded, but there was a comment on YouTube asking about that. So that video on Cinequad's YouTube channel will have a link to the raw logs within a few minutes. So
yeah, we'll be sure to share that through some links and make that available for those who want to really dive into the nitty gritty of the science and the logs behind it. but that'll all be available. A reminder: the frame's available right now today on GetFPV.com. We actually have them in stock here. Shipping. You order it today; it's going to ship today. The ready to fly kits, we're doing the first build batch later this month. So if you were to build one or buy one today in early August, it'll ship later in August. And if you watch this video later on, we'll probably already have them in stock ready to ship. Our plan is to keep them in stock going forward and have them ready to go. So you guys, when you need one, you can get one and we'll ship them out. Thanks so much to Cinequads, Phil and Angelo, Quad McFly, Santi. Thanks for joining us here, and congratulations on a project well done and exciting that we released this finally to the public. And look forward to everyone's reaction as more and more people get these into their hands. And we really want to see those videos and thoughts once you get them. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you later.